A folk tale is an old story that's been told again and again, often for generations. Folk tales are stories in the oral tradition, or tales that people tell each other out loud, rather than stories in written form. Folklore is made of two words, folk, which means regional people, and lore, which means stories. If you're interested in learning more about your heritage, you might read some folk tales from the country in which your great-great-grandparents grew up. They're closely related to many storytelling traditions, including fables, myths, and fairy tales. Every human society has its own folk tales. These well-known stories, handed down between generations, are an important way of passing along knowledge, information, and history. There are many ways for cultures to express their beliefs through folklore. Some populations use song and dance to tell their stories, while others tell larger-than-life stories about mythical heroes. And that is the meaning of folklore. A parable is a short and simple story that teaches a religious or moral lesson. A short story that uses familiar events to illustrate a religious or ethical point. Any of the stories of this kind told by Jesus Christ. A statement or comment that conveys a meaning indirectly by the use of comparison, analogy, or the like. The word parable comes from the Greek parabole, literally throwing, bole, alongside para, by extension meaning comparison, illustration, analogy. It was the name given by Greek rhetoricians to an illustration in the form of a brief, fictional narrative. The parable of the Good Samaritan and the parable of the prodigal son are just two examples of the many parables attributed to Jesus as recorded in the four Gospels. And that is the meaning of parable. Myth, a symbolic narrative usually of unknown origin and at least partly traditional, that ostensibly relates actual events and that is specifically associated with religious belief. It is distinguished from symbolic behavior, cult, ritual, and symbolic places or objects, temples, icons. Myths are specific accounts of gods or superhuman beings involved in extraordinary events or circumstances in a time that is unspecified but which is understood as existing apart from ordinary human experience. The term mythology denotes both the study of myth and the body of myths belonging to a particular religious tradition. By extension from this primary religious meaning, the word myth may also be used more loosely to refer to an ideological belief when the belief is the object of a quasi-religious faith. The word myth derives from the Greek mythos, which has a range of meanings from word, through saying, and story, to fiction. The unquestioned validity of mythos can be contrasted with logos, the word whose validity or truth can be argued and demonstrated. Because myths narrate fantastic events with no attempt of proof, it is sometimes assumed that they are simply stories with no factual basis, and the word has become a synonym for falsehood or at best, misconception. Here are some famous tales from Greek mythology. Theogony, Clash of the Titans, Pandora's Box, Daedalus and Icarus, and many more. And that is the meaning of mythology. Fable, narrative form usually featuring animals that behave and speak as human beings, told in order to highlight human follies and weaknesses. The Western tradition of fable effectively begins with Aesop, a likely legendary figure to whom is attributed a collection of ancient Greek fables. Modern editions contain up to 200 fables, but there is no way of tracing their actual origins. The earliest known collection linked to Aesop dates to the 4th century BCE. The fable is one of the most enduring forms of folk literature spread abroad. Modern researchers agree, less by literary anthologies than by oral transmission. Fables can be found in the literature of almost every country. A person who writes fables is a fabulist. Here are some examples of famous fable stories. The Boy Who Cried Wolf, The Fox and the Cat, and many more. And that's the meaning of fable. Legend, traditional story, or group of stories told about a particular person or place. Formerly, the term legend meant a tale about a saint. Legends resemble folk tales in content. They may include supernatural beings, elements of mythology, or explanations of natural phenomena. But they are associated with a particular locality or person and are told as a matter of history. Its meaning stems from the medieval Latin term legenda, meaning things to be read, and from the Latin legendus. Legend is a story handed down through generations, which is believed to be historical. Legends don't claim to be exact retellings of events, so they are neither wholly believed nor wholly doubted by the audience or the author. Here are some examples of legend. The Legend of King Arthur, Legend of Beowulf, The Legend of the Vampire Count Dracula. And that is the meaning of legend.